something that I'd just like to say is that the purpose of the conversation is to talk about what is Men's Health Month's theme this year, which is positive male role models.
Yeah.
And just sort of touch on that from all of our angles, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a great year for it to be. I think it's an interesting topic. It's definitely something that I have seen change a lot over my short span as a man and a boy, I guess. But yeah, it'd be interesting to just hear everyone, I guess, and see what their thoughts are on role models right now.
It's funny because reflecting on what we spoke about earlier, like we had a conversation around the fire at Scores and Stories the other day that the male role models in the media aren't what they used to be. But reflecting on that, especially after our conversation today, I don't think they've ever portrayed good male role models in the media. I don't think it's ever been that way. If I look back to when I was younger, it was musicians who were sex, drugs, rock and roll, and I really brought into that vision at the time. I got rock and roll tattooed on my toes. That's how much I brought into it.
I think you followed that path, didn't you?
I followed that path. Yeah. I was looking up to these musicians and stuff like that weren't positive male role models at all. And it's actually, if you looked at how the media, I remember when Alice Cooper started playing golf and become a born-again Christian, and he was like mocked in the media as like, look at the state of him. He used to be this cool rock star who was taking drugs and getting off his face all the time. Now he's a Christian who plays golf. Like, what a sad fucker.
Yeah.
And where, the bottom line was, his life was a million times better than it used to be then when he was put across as this like cool guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's probably just more role models now, and the extremes are bigger. Right now there's 3 cameras on our face. I mean, when Alice Cooper was about, there's probably 3 cameras on him. So
yeah,
it sort of proves how much we've gone as a society, I guess. So yeah, that's how I'm seeing it, is that there's more, and maybe the choice and the extremes to sort of go viral, I guess, is creating more diverse role models, rather than when it's like how I've always seen it is when it was TV and when it was sort of before social and it was easy to access these people, it was rare to see them. So maybe that's why they were given that role model sort of title, because they're on a pedestal and they're there to be seen when we were allowed to see them. But maybe if they existed now, we probably would be like, what are they actually doing with their lives in that sort of scenario? But yeah, that's...
Yeah, maybe so. I think, and the internet has opened up a whole new scope of different male role models and stuff, hasn't it? Or different males in the limelight, rather than just this musician or this actor who's in the newspapers and they're getting the airplay. There's that many now, some good, some bad, that it's a bit harder, I think, for young men and probably young women as well to focus in on the ones that maybe are the best and kind of pick them out of everybody that is like spoiled for choice, isn't it? It's like you go on Netflix now. There was 5 channels when I was a kid. You pick a channel, you'd find something all the time to put on. You go on Netflix now, there's hundreds of programs. Half the time I can't find anything fucking watch. And it's like, there's that much choice. And maybe they've got the same sort of choice of role models to follow. It isn't just the musician, it isn't just the actor. They've got these people that I like how you put it earlier, that very, very conflicting. Somebody at one particular end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, like the Andrew Tates and stuff, that is very much one way, to on the opposite end of the scale, like Sam Smith in his shit show, whatever you want to call that. Can't think of a better way to describe it, to be honest.
It's fair enough.
Well, I think we live in an age, don't we, now, that's just information overload. Like, it's so accessible, from, I'm 37, so when I was growing up, it was like I come through the age of, at high school, getting the first mobile phone, where it was just normal text, call. We used to text by pressing like 222, 333 and all that. And, having Snake on your phone. To us now, being a parent myself to a 6 and a 7-year-old, it's just expansive, isn't it? Absolutely everywhere.
Well, and it's information overload that's not correct information.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother can of worms. But, you know, talking about people in media who are your role models, that I think has evolved with this information explosion, because when I was growing up, if you would ask me who my male role model would have been, I would have thought about my grandfather. I wouldn't have thought about somebody on social media. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I was a little bit of a tomboy. I loved watching the NBA. We just had this conversation the other night, you know, watching Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. But my favorite was probably Charles Barkley, because he actually did a commercial talking about how he is not a role model.
Right.
And he's in that commercial, he said, your parents should be your role models. And I thought,
That was powerful, wasn't it?
yeah. And I was pretty young when that came out. But again, you know, I look at of course, my grandfather was a World War II vet, you know, grew up during the Depression. And I look at that as we just keep working and we just get on with it. And that happened, but that's, you know, I'm not dwelling on that. I'm just moving on with my life. And that was, I think, my biggest positive male role model. What didn't have anything to do with a star, a celebrity. Yeah.
I think my view on this as well, the other side of the coin, as going to positive role models, there are men, boys, girls, women growing up around the wrong sort of men, the wrong sort of role models in their life, and the counter argument to so much more and so much overload is that if done well and done right, you can find positive role models outside of your current sphere and maybe break the trend, because it's been quite natural for that to be what happens, right? You end up in a cycle.
Right.
Dad hit mom, so I hit my partner.
Yeah.
That's the sort of cycle that sort of you don't want to be in. So having things that are outside of that and allow you to, I guess, question your current reality is really important. But it's all about that balance and how do you. Well, I guess. Well, yeah. What's your opinion on that? Because you've got kids, right? So, like, I haven't. So I don't know what that would look like for me, because I would want to be the role model. But it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think naturally, you know, touch on what Ollie said. When I grew up, I come from a broken family, and my dad left when I was 6. I never had no role models when I was growing up at home. My grandfathers had passed away. I got my nan next door, who was like a mother to me. My mum was an alcoholic. So I grew up and I looked at, like, you know, like Kings of Leon was one of them at one time. And I was latching on to people in the media that I just want to be like them.
Right.
Like, oh, I'd love being in that position. No concept of what it took to get there or anything. It was, I'd love to be like that, living that lifestyle, and just creating belief systems in my head, you know, based on no facts or anything.
Right.
To growing up. And then I fell in the wrong crowd. You know, it was the older boys. It was like, oh, they're pretty cool, like how they live their lives. So I want to be around them. And, you know, I went into addiction for many a year. I'm in recovery now. So I think it starts at home, that if you're a positive role model to your kids, I'm a firm believer in that, then that translates into your children looking for positives. You know, I was in a very much negative situation when I was younger, and looking at it now with hindsight, it's great, but looking at it now, I was going into negative situations. I was seeking out negative situations, not knowing at the time that that's what I was doing, but that's how it translated for me.
Yeah, like subconsciously sort of.
Yeah, whereas, you know, I think
in them places.
if I'm being a positive role model to my kids and they're seeing what I do, that then, you know, they're going to look for positives in other things and look for positives in the media. You know, me two little ones, they've got little kids' tablets that they go on. It's, you know, very restricted. But it's positive stuff that they're going on and looking for, and that's not all come from you can only watch that. You can only watch that. They're sort of doing it themselves. Yes, they're very young, 6 and 7, but you know, it's the first time I'm being a parent, so we'll see. We'll see as it goes, but that's ever evolving. But yeah, I never had that role model in my life, and that's how it worked out for me. And I see it so much, you know, I volunteer in the addiction sector now, and you just see it time and time again. Yeah. You know, that script from when they're young, it's like you could write it. Yeah. How it plays out.
You know, one of the things with the toxic masculinity and working with people from the criminal justice, what it is most of the time, it's an absence of masculinity. It's the fact that those guys who've gone on to commit offences that would fall under this toxic masculinity umbrella have got no male role model, or they've got a very bad model that they're following. Like you said, Lewis, of the one who's hitting the partner at home, and then they fall into that, well, I do that because Dad, rather than breaking that cycle. But a lot of the time, it's none. There's nobody there. There's nobody there to show them how to be a man. There's nobody there showing the women, the girls, how a man acts and stuff. And they haven't got anybody there. And it's quite ironic that they call it toxic masculinity when it's the absence of. There's no masculinity there at all. Like and it leads down a kind of coward's path, really. Like eventually, I think.
I had 2 dads. Not gay. Probably should put that in there. They're not gay. I'm not. I don't want to misrepresent. No, my parents were divorced when I was very, very young, and both remarried and stayed with them forever. But so I grew up in my mom and my stepdad's home, and then of course, you know, went and saw my dad and my stepmom. And my point is that I had 2 male role models. They had different personalities, but both were very vocal to me and my sisters about their expectations for us, and you know, what was appropriate, what isn't appropriate. What I should say, it's probably more expectations of you will grow up and get a college degree or university degree, and you will learn to support yourself so that you're not reliable on anybody else, so that you know that when you're ready to get married, it's okay because you know that you can support yourself if anything happens. And I thought that was an interesting, I never thought about it before, but I thought it was interesting. It came from both places, but you know, my parents had divorced. And I think that the time that they had that was very, very rough during that divorce, they didn't want that for their daughters. But we heard these expectations from our parents, and my dad in particular was very much, you need to learn how to support yourself. And I'm not 100% sure where that came from, but talking about being a masculine role model, you know, not saying you don't need a man, but just saying you do need to be independent as well. You know, you don't want to be dependent on somebody, but with the caveat, do that before you get married. You know, and I thought that was a really interesting concept from, you know, a female perspective, maybe.
Definitely, yeah.
That men don't think about. I mean, I don't know if anybody told any of you need to make sure you have a job and be independent before you have a family. But it would make sense because, you know, most of us probably grew up in an area of the culturally traditional of the man being the breadwinner. And putting that pressure on a man, you're the breadwinner. So you better get your act together before you bring anybody else into your fold.
I think sometimes the greatest lessons as well can not come from those guidance messages, but from what not to do. You know, look at the path that this went down. I don't want to be that. Rather than say with some of these people from the criminal justice that they take on that bad role model and think, I'm going to be the one that changes the trajectory of how things go. Right. I'm going to break the cycle and I'm going to go down this route. I love the Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and how he's learning the money lessons from one dad and the one not how to do things a lot of the time from the other dad. He's taking both lessons, somehow not to do things and somehow to do things and that, like, and it's not necessarily that he's being told to do this. He's seeing where that one's leading and think, I'm not gonna do that, because that's only leading him to be skint and miserable. So I'm gonna follow the other one, like. And I think that's interesting as well, that you don't need to necessarily be told these lessons. You can see how not to do things. I always say that I learned how to be a manager from 2 managers. One, she was amazing. The other was terrible, like, and I learned off them too how to be a good manager. One showed me how not to do it, and the other one showed me how to do it, and I just followed more so. Well, I think I did anyway. The one that showed me how to do it.
It's yet to be seen.
No, I totally agree with that. It's, I'm sort of, I never met my granddads. Yes, I was involved in my dad's life, but my stepmom made it really difficult for me to have a relationship with him, and he always put her needs before mine. So I didn't really learn that much from him. But then, I extrapolate all the stuff from them, like even my mum, of how to be a parent now. Don't do the things that it made me feel.
Yeah.
And be a positive influence and a positive role model to my children. I'm separated from my partner that I had my children with, but we have a fantastic relationship. She dropped me off today. She come from a broken sort of family, different than mine, but, we see the impact that's had on children, and we want it to be completely different. You have children, and it's like, that's your responsibility. You're responsible for how they turn out. And I don't think people get that sometimes.
No.
No, not at all.
I think they put it down to chance a lot of the time.
Right.
And I think you're led to believe it's chance. Oh, when they go up to high school, all that will change and stuff, like, because they're putting their shit on you. I think that's what I found. It was like, we'd always speak about how well behaved Ellie was. Oh, well, once you go up to high school, that'll all change. And you're kind of thinking, oh no, like dreading when they're going up high school. And I think if you've got that that feeling of being wanted and that homely sort of environment, regardless of whether you're together or not, we're exactly the same as you. We get on really well. We split up, but we co-parent. But if they're only looking for something outside of the home if they're not getting it within the home. And they'll only find that, I think, in friends at school or the wrong crowd if you aren't some way getting that fulfillment from the household. Like, I don't think it's down to chance at all. I don't think any of it comes down to chance.
No, it doesn't. School's an interesting one. I think for me that I heard a funny quote that was like, when you realise it's your parents' first time living as well, you go a lot easier on them.
Yeah.
Which I really like that, because it's like you want the best for your kids, right? But you're learning as well, and you've said it yourself. This is your first time as a parent. Like, so it's a tricky one, because you want the best for your kids, but you're going to make mistakes, and it's just like I don't know how I'm going to parent. It's not something that I've considered or looked at all, because I'm not ready for that. I don't know what that looks like, but it's going to be interesting, because you want your kids to have what you didn't have, but then does that turn them into something that you don't want them to be? Like, it's very tricky. It's like, I don't envy anyone at the table. Let's put it that way. And it's like those like weird things to think of, but like, that for me is sort of my view on it. Is like, how do you give them what you didn't have, but not turn them into brats, or like it's a tricky balance, right?
I think Joe Rogan said something about that. Said anybody that I've met, he said, that's got good qualities that I'd like my children to have has had a pretty fucked up life. He says, I don't want my kids to have a fucked up life, but at the same time, I don't want them to be little brats. Yeah. And the way he put it, he says, I've chose to put them in martial arts where they're doing something difficult and getting the rewards from that. But it is struggle, he says, because I don't want them to really struggle in life. But I think you try and shelter them from that heartbreak, from that struggle. The tendency, especially as a parent, is that you don't want them to go through anything bad, yet all the growth that you look at in your life comes from when the shit hit the fan in some way, shape, or form, when a relationship collapsed, when you were made redundant, when your business went under, or you lost a contract. All the growth comes from having that struggle, but you don't really want to have any struggle. So it is a tough one, I think, navigating that, really.
Yeah, I think, however I thought I'd parent, it's completely different. It's like you can envisage it beforehand, but it's forever changing. It's so dynamic. Like one day's not the same from the next. Certainly not week by week, month by month, year by year. They grow.
Minute by minute.
Minute by minute. You know, they grow, they evolve. Like, this, you know, my two children are so different. But I think the main thing for me is being with them and creating a relationship where they can always come to me no matter what. Because in them difficult times, then they will come to me and we can sit and we can talk, and they know that it's, you know, I'm their comfort in them times, and letting them be individuals.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Don't project what you want to do with your life onto them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Yeah. I think that, you know, I lost my husband when Roman was 18 months old. And so I didn't think that I was going to be a single parent. You know, that was, you know, a twist. And so just trying to figure out parenting by yourself, which I say, you know, there are millions of single parents out there. So if other people can do this, I could do it. But also because I'm parenting a boy, I don't want him to miss out on having that masculine influence. And I'm not going to lie, we play basketball and I would push him down. You know, put him in some sports because, you know, boys mostly are rough and tumble. And, you know, and I wanted him to have that. You know, trying to put him in, you know, different circumstances where he is around other men. And luckily, you know, he has uncles and grandparents and things like that that are always willing to, you know, be that. But that is something that for some reason I never thought about. And then when that became my reality, it was like, oh, you know, like I said before, I used to be a little bit of a tomboy. I mean, I could fish and play in the mud with the best of them, but I did like to play with my Barbies, and I play dress up and all of those things. I mean, very much just an all around kid, could play and do anything, but understanding that, you know, I put Roman's hair up in little ponytails for crazy hair day at school one time, and he said, "No girl, Mom, no girl." And I think back, I'm like, he's not, you know, I mean, he's not going to want that, and I need to help him get that fulfillment from like what you were talking about, Grant, you know, not having that male or that masculine in your house day to day. It makes a difference.
Yeah. And you know, the book I'm reading at the minute now, which I can't recall off the top of my head, there's a lot less men going into teaching roles and stuff and that as well.
Exactly.
So that the guys who haven't got that male role model at home aren't getting it in the school either, like, because it's predominantly female teachers going into education now, which is a shame as well. And, you know, this guy was looking at how can we get more men into those roles, really, so that we've got an even keel and an even balance between the two, that the young lads or the young girls who haven't got that male role model at home are getting it, at least in the school.
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate with my school. It was pre 50-50.
Yeah, man.
Which was very rare, like to have male teachers. It definitely was a benefit for me. I think I can recall numerous conversations with male teachers. I wasn't like a shit, but I wasn't like. I think I like to push the boundaries. Like it was, I don't know why. Like I wasn't struggling. I was doing all right. Like I was quite a smart kid, I guess. But like, yeah, I don't know, just seemed to try and push those boundaries. And I had a number of male teachers that, again, just completely different people that gave me a different perspective on life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And that's sort of like my big thing with this is I'm a big fan of role models, and I'm a big fan of positive role models, but I'm not a fan of one role model.
Right,
and I think that's something that a lot of people get confused. It's like you touched on it, that you had this one hero as a kid, and maybe that hero changed, and it might have been a footballer, or it might have been a musician, or whatever it might be. And what I'm trying to encourage is don't listen to one person blindly, because you don't know what their intentions are. You 100%. Don't know what they've been through, what their visions are on life. And I think it's important to, like you said, you had a good manager and a bad manager, and you took parts from both, right? And I think that's a skill that's lacking, is like this ability to listen, compute, and make an informed decision rather than just being like, what did you say? Oh, okay, great, let's do that. Like,
right.
So yeah.
Understand the qualities, for sure. Because you could have, you can admire somebody for their business acumen, but like you said, on the backside, they could be doing something that is not very admirable. That you could say, I like the way that this person does business, but I'm not a fan of the way that this person maybe treats other people. I mean,
the other thing is as well, I think we've gone down a route, and it seems to me to be from the COVID time that if you like something somebody says, you must agree with everything that they say, rather than as Zuby put it, you take the meat off the bones and the stuff that you can really implement in your life and do that, and the other stuff just leave. I don't agree with them on that, but I agree with them on X, Y, and Z. Right. And I think we've lost that if you like something someone says, then you must be completely on board with everything that person says. And it's right. I've never met one person in my entire life who I agree with everything they say ever. It's some stuff I do, some stuff I don't, and I'd say
well. And there, now, like you said, it's since COVID, but in the States, our politics has gotten so divisive.
Oh yeah, completely.
That you can't. It's. They used to say you're not supposed to talk about money, religion, and politics, and everybody would kind of laugh about that. Oh, we're going to talk about that anyway. But I really feel like it has moved back to you don't talk about politics in mixed company if you don't know where they're coming from, because people will cut off their families because of their, but it goes back to that. You might not agree with everything that politician is saying, but you do agree with a policy that they helped pass or whatever, but people we just want to paint everybody with a broad stroke, and it's easier that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Saw a great quote the other day that looking up to a politician is like thinking the stripper likes you. Completely agree.
You mean they don't like you? Damn it.
Well, I wanted to say because I am a teacher, and I had in my growing up, and I went to a smaller school in the States, lots of men teachers, probably about the time we were in, we called it junior high. Now they call it middle school, but junior high and high school. And it did make a difference to have a female teacher and a male teacher. I hate to say it, but we probably were a little bit better behaved for our male teachers than our female teachers in some respects. But I think that balance, and I can remember very specific things that those male teachers brought into the building, that if you go into a building and there's 2 male teachers and the rest are female, I mean, there is a very big difference in the, I don't want to just say it's discipline, because that's not it, but I think that those types of role models for kids is, I think where it's really lacking is the very younger years, and which is unfortunate because that is where the little ones really could benefit, especially if they
from that
don't have,
discipline and
yeah, and
running a bit wild.
yeah, well, and just even wanting that male attention. But anyway, I think that that's very important. The only thing that I would say to that is that we've kind of created that monster when when we don't pay our teachers that well.
Yeah.
And and that brings back into that cultural context of, if you're the man of the house and you're expected to bring in maybe a better income, then you're not going to be able to do that teaching.
Right.
It's
a shame, isn't it?
And so a lot of men left teaching in order to make more money. And so a lot of women who are teachers, that teaching income is considered a secondary income.
Yeah.
Right.
And which I think that's kind of where that all boils down. But it's hitting us in ways that people aren't looking at, that we're taking away these experiences that our young men and women could have when they're in high school by learning how to communicate with men and women. That's what it boils down to, I think, is that whole idea of how to communicate once you get to a certain age group.
Well, I remember we had some male teachers and we were like terrified of them. But it was a good thing. Like I did quite well in those classes. It was good. Yeah, I got me shit done in those lessons because you knew there was no fucking about. You're in there and you get it done. Otherwise, you're having it like you're in trouble. And I think that's probably missing a little bit. Not that I want Ellie to be terrified of a teacher, but for the people I think that are a little bit, want to mess about a bit. I was sort of same as you, Luce. I always sort of sailed on bar, but I liked to sort of mess about a bit. And I think those people kind of kept you in line, those teachers kept you in line, where in other classes where you knew you could fuck about, you would do. Where there were certain lessons you thought, head down, getting on with the work in that lesson, like, because otherwise you're getting the board rubber like launched at you.
Well, and I think we have different expectations of how teachers should interact with students. When I was in high school or when I was in school, my parents were, if I did something and got in trouble, it was definitely my fault. It wasn't the teacher was being mean or, it was,
100%.
I don't know what you've done, but this is your punishment and you won't do that again. And, now it literally is, well, what did the teacher do?
It is, isn't it? That's a good, that's a really good point.
And to me, that's worrisome. Not saying that there aren't teachers that do things that they shouldn't do, but I think that's worrisome that we've almost shifted to the point where, again, that's why people are leaving teaching.
Well, I suppose
but we're not teaching that group, this generation or whatever you want to call it, that once you hit adulthood, there's a level of respect that, this is how you behave. And I think that that's missing. And I don't know if I am a little conservative, if you can't tell, in that sense. I just think that, you take an adult's word for the most part. I mean, obviously there are people out there.
That's a really good point. You do. It's more now. It's a teacher's fault. It's not the kid's fault. And it's like, your kid's a little bastard. Like, have a look at your kid before you start blaming it on the teacher.
It can be, or it could be that there are certain times when that kid is having a rough time, and maybe the teacher didn't handle it that great, but it's still not. I think that a lot of the issues that we're seeing behavior-wise in school is not this happening at school. I think that's stemming from something beyond that, but the buck kind of stops at the school.
A lot of the time a bully's bullied, aren't they? A kid who bullies at school a lot of the time is sort of bullied at home and takes that power back by going in school and bullying other kids. But yeah, I think
And having those
think it's
male
like-
role models in school is
I was exactly the same. If I got in trouble at school, my dad was like, "What have you done?" It wasn't like, "Oh, it's going in there, blaming it on the teacher, saying it was the teacher's fault." Like it was like, "What have you done?" Like own it basically.
well,
Even
we
if
know
you try,
that you
even if you
probably
try to
did.
blame the teacher.
Well, of course you did.
Always the teacher's fault. So what I've noticed is I have some teacher friends, and just to sort of bring it sort of into more external, I guess, is there's less male teachers, granted, and therefore boys and girls are seeking other male role models, either offline. And there's obviously a decline in sort of activities such as sport. So you sort of losing that side of things in clubs and scouts and those sort of things. That's just naturally happening. But what I've noticed is when these role models online that may be deemed as toxic or are toxic in their wording are brought to the attention of these boys, the way that that's dealt with is just an overarching don't watch that person.
Ban 'em.
Yeah.
Ban, get rid.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to go full circle on what I want to happen, which is conversations about what people are saying, it's like, what are you interested in? What is that guy saying right now that is ticking some boxes?
Right. That's appealing to you.
Yeah.
Something is drawing you in.
Because there's probably an element of good to that. And it's
100%.
like, how do you hone that in and turn that into something positive rather than something toxic? Because that person has fame and has attention. So use that because there's a reason that they're interested in it. So find what it is and turn it into something positive, because it's going to be something daft. Like, they want to make loads of money.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, you want to make loads of money, you want to own a Bugatti, let's get to work. Like, do you know how hard
work on that.
Yeah,
Right.
like how hard's that going to be?
Yeah.
And let's play that game rather than don't listen to that guy.
Well,
Right.
as soon as you're told as a kid, don't do that, straight away you want to do it, don't you? Oh, well, why not? Why not? And before, I remember they brought the case of drugs in. The police officer brought the case of drugs in school, and he's telling everybody what they do, and nobody's thinking, "Oh, I won't do that." Everyone's thinking, "That sounds fucking ace."
How'd you get the case?
But it's how'd you get the case? Somebody actually did try and nick the case, and it was a police officer coming in, and it was a don't do this. This is bad. You're gonna die. Basically, that was like, in a nutshell. That's what it was. Which, certain aspects of that are true to a certain extent,
Right.
but everybody's like, well, they were telling us about like some giant Mars bar, and everybody's thinking that sounds fucking ace. So with the people like Tate and like people like that who are trying to ban in school, rather than, like you say, looking at what is drawing this. I agree with a lot of stuff Andrew Tate says, and a lot of stuff I don't. And this is what I say about sort of not, picking the meat off the bones. What works? What's making? I've implemented stuff that he said, and it's made my life 10 times better. Also, the way he delivers the way he delivers a lot of that stuff, I don't fucking agree with at all. How he speaks and his language and stuff. But to sort of paint somebody as, don't listen to this person because this person's saying this, which may be bad, and ignoring the stuff that he's saying that's good, where you can go and get any rap album and listen to 12 songs of bitches, and I won't even say the other stuff that's mentioned in there, shooting people, killing people, taking drugs, and that be okay, and nobody really bother about that. Yet this person's saying a few things, and delivering it in a bit of a controversial manner. This is the biggest threat we've got to children ever. Is crazy. Rather than, like you say, Lewis, having conversations and sitting down. What do you like about this? Well, you know what? I want to be fit, healthy, and I want to be strong. Right? Is that what you're taking from that that's working? Okay, let's get you in the gym. Let's get you into sports or something. Or I want money. I want to be rich. I want to be financially free. Where if you're taking the sort of how he speaks to women in some way and taking that from it, right? Okay, well, we've got an issue here that we need to address, and we need to talk about. If you're thinking that the way this person delivers that is kind of cool or something, then it's not. And educating around that rather than don't listen to this person because everything they say is going to make your life bad. He's a bad person. Where there's not many people that are completely good or completely bad. They'll say some bad things or they'll say some good things, and it's taking those little elements of that, which is what you're doing with your podcast, isn't it? You're taking people in, you're listening to the whole conversation and the person. And I've listened to some Andrew Tate conversations, and they've been very positive and very upbeat. And then I've listened to something else, and I thought, what a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't believe you said that. You said something there really good, and then I heard you say that, and it's like that was just completely unnecessary. In one episode, he said something, and the guy went, "Why did you do that?" And he went, "What?" And he smiled, and he says, "You do it on purpose, don't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course I do." I deliver it in a way that it has its maximum impact. And it hits different rather than I'm saying a lot of the stuff that people are saying because I'm saying it in a different way. And, we live in an attention economy, and that's what's happened, hasn't it? All the attention's gone to this person because he's a bit more controversial than, say, the next person who's probably saying very similar.
It makes me cringe thinking that instead of having that conversation, like you said, it's just, it's a ban. We're not going to talk about it. Don't mention them. You can't, we don't want to see you on your phone and have that website up or whatever it is. But yet in the same breath, those same people are worried that, or they're trying to advocate for people whose voices have been silenced. And it's like, wait a minute, you're being so hypocritical that whenever and this is my history and government teacher coming out, but I think about, as soon as we start turning off the people who we don't want to listen to, that's when it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous.
And you should always know what people are thinking. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you like what they're saying, but at least you know and maybe try to understand why they're even saying it. Because the whole idea of the term toxic masculinity, and I was reading an article sometime, but it was brought up, well, there's toxic feminists as well, and
it's toxic people.
And that's what it boils down to. There's people can just be toxic. And but the powers that be, they grab onto this term and they just, it incites people and it sells papers or sells ads, and that's what they do.
And it's generating separation.
It is.
That's what it's doing. We're living in an age where people don't challenge their own thinking. And that's something I'm massive about with my children. We're living in an age of instant gratification and rigid thinking individuals. Not everyone, granted, but I see it a lot. And I think of myself, I went through life for a large part not challenging my own thinking and unable to. But then I look back and I was never shown how to. I was never in an environment where I felt safe and comfortable to do that. So I was never shown. I was never learnt to do that.
Right.
Whereas this is what we're trying to impart on the children: to challenge your own thinking around everything, everything in life.
What is it about this person that's triggered you? What is it that's made you feel that way? Has that sort of brought up something from your past? What's made you feel that way? I said to Lewis when we caught up earlier that the people who I watch that spark a bigger reaction in me sparks a very much a positive move forward. That if I'm told something that I don't want to hear a lot of the time, that works to motivate me and move me towards closer to my goals. I listen to Andy Vassallo and Sean Whalen, two of the main guys. They're quite outspoken, they're quite loud and out there, and they'll say it as it is. And I'm in the Lions Den coaching group, and in that group, when he's told me something I don't want to hear, that has moved me forward more so than hearing something that I want to hear. It's given me that sort of kick up the arse. Where now somebody hears something you see in sort of the mainstream stuff, that somebody hears something they don't want to hear, they're offended by it rather than using it as a positive motivator, really, I think. challenging that thinking, like you say.
Just let you know, just gone past 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, good.
Nice
Not
one.
anything off.
Yeah.
Hey,
Are you going to
Flew
wrap it
by,
up?
yeah.
hey, should we
Give it a wrap up.
should we end it? We want it lead on, really. What's you're the podcast host. Like, what could he end it for? Leading it on to. That's got that quick.
I do.
Yeah.
I do want to say you said Men's Health Month. Didn't you mean National? Sorry, I just dribbled water down.
International Men's Day.
Didn't you mean, or is that the same thing?
November's Men's Health Month.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's International Men's Day as well. Yeah.
Is within the month.
Yeah.
Okay, and then International Men's Day is when you're having the event.
Well, yeah, it's a Saturday after.
Okay.
In
Okay.
and
Oh, got
around.
it. Okay.
I don't know whether we do need to.
No, you
fully
just
wrap
To wrap it
yeah,
up.
just end it where you feels good, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's plenty here. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Sounded
maybe
interesting.
nice
maybe
one.
do a little sign off though. Maybe say something about it was a good conversation or something like that they could, or it was crap conversation. What I was gonna say.
I really like how you say my name.
Well, I was gonna say, and I don't know if for when you meet again, what bothers me is that when they use that term toxic masculinity to put all men down. And I think that the making fun of men's little quirks, the differences between men and women, which are fun to poke fun at.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when that turns into being more like just plain out mean, and just and putting men down, I think that we've gone a step too far, whereas I just don't want my son growing up feeling like he's has these things that he's being put down for. I just that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of bring up, but
I think
didn't
that's
get that far.
I guess the way to sort of finalize it is I'm really happy that this is this year's theme, because you've touched on that there. You're saying that at the moment it's very much toxic masculinity, and I'm excited to explore what positive role models means for people, because it's a really important conversation, and it's what's going to dilute true toxicity rather than just pointing at it. And for me, I'm really excited to continue having conversations like these with different people and more people, and really start to have a narrative of positive male role models.
Yeah, shining a light on that.
Right.
Definitely.
Very good.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very
Been a
good.
pleasure, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice chatting.